Hello everyone and welcome back to DC Central, and in today's video we're going to be breaking down and reviewing The Flash Season 7 Episode 8, otherwise entitled The People vs. Killer Frost. So if you have not seen this episode, make sure you go and do so before proceeding with this review, as it will be filled with spoilers. So it has certainly been quite a long while since I last reviewed The Flash. The last episode I reviewed was episode 3 of season 7, which was quite the monumental episode, as that was supposed to be the original finale for season 6. So we are now about 5 or so episodes into the actual story of season 7. So just to quickly start off this video, I'll talk about my thoughts on this current season so far. It's been good. I've enjoyed it. It's not been top tier stuff for me in terms of The Flash. It's not been amazing. I feel like the story has taken a little bit of a while to kind of find its footing and get going as to what it's actually trying to do. But now we kind of have a better idea of what the story is, what the threat is, obviously the idea of the different forces that are at play in this season. I'm a lot more on board with it than what I was in the first couple of episodes, where I did find it a little bit slow. So for me, I think that season 7, the actual story that started in episode 4, it's pretty good. I am enjoying it. Like I say, I always enjoy The Flash, no matter what. But like I say, it's not top tier stuff, but it's still pretty damn good and pretty entertaining for what it is. But going on to talk about this episode, the main storyline we have going on in this episode is that Killer Frost is now facing the public trial after her arrest at the end of the last episode, and this whole storyline is basically revolving around her and her previous crimes when she was a villain, but also arguing against that and saying, well, look at the good she's done as a hero in the last few years. So quite an interesting story to go in for this season, and this episode is mostly a courtroom episode. Every now and then the CW might do one of these, like Arrow did it in season 6, and this is pretty much a courtroom episode. We don't really get much action at all in this episode, if any, and we barely get any Flash in the episode as well. We basically get one scene with the Flash and that's it. It's mainly just a courtroom episode and another side story going on, so let's dive into that. So the Killer Frost story, one thing I really want to pick up upon in this first part here is the acting, which I have to say, Danielle Panabaker, who of course plays Caitlin Snow and Killer Frost, she was phenomenal in this episode. I think this is probably Danielle Panabaker's best performance on the show. She was fantastic in this episode, really delivered some really strong range of emotions, got a lot of really strong sad moments, but also a lot of really angry moments as well. Obviously this kind of conflict she's dealing with of, having to say goodbye to Killer Frost, but also trying to pursue the legal direction in the right way. It was a really interesting moral conflict for that character, which we haven't really seen Caitlin be put in a position like this in a very long time. Caitlin is often quite a passive character in the sense that, she doesn't really get a lot to do in regards to decision making, so the fact that she's so central to this plot, I really appreciate, and it allowed Danielle Panabaker to really act her ass off in this, which I really liked. And also the fact, obviously, she has to play two characters. She plays Caitlin and she plays Frost, and she has to play against herself quite a bit in these episodes as well. We've seen it in the last couple of episodes, and particularly in this one, she really does a good job of acting against herself. As we now have Caitlin and Frost as two individual people talking to each other, and she has to play both roles. So that's really good, really great stuff, and I think she did a fantastic job making it all land. And another acting performance I want to point out is Kramer. Kramer has kind of been this sort of side villain we've had this season, a lot more of a human personal threat, who has been pursuing Killer Frost. Basically, and it's revealed in this episode what her deal is. Basically, she doesn't have a vendetta against Frost particularly, but she did send in a team of hers to go and take down a metahuman threat who she didn't think was a threat, and that decision ended up costing her the life of that entire team. So she basically wants to set a precedent by using the metahuman cure, which comes back in this episode, to remove any metahuman villain who is arrested and who poses a threat to Central City should have their powers removed, whether they want to or not, which brings up an interesting point, because obviously the metahuman cure, which was created in season 5, that was created as a voluntary thing for metahumans. It was something that could not be forced upon them. It was something that had to be purely voluntary. If they wanted to give up their powers, then they could, but if they didn't want to, then they didn't have to. And what Kramer is basically saying is, if they are a villain and they are posing a threat and we arrest them, we should remove their powers, because then we are, in essence, removing the threat. which I think was an interesting plot to bring up, because the metahuman cure hasn't really been around for a little while. Like, we haven't really spoken about it, we haven't really mentioned it in the show for a little while, so it was really cool to bring it back in, and to bring it in this way, where it actually has, you know, a bit of a conflict between the characters and the people of Central City, like how they feel about it, and the fact that Kramer was kind of trying to set a precedent with this, I thought was really interesting. Now, we do see Kramer leave at the end of this, and I do think that the actress who portrayed her has done a really good job this season, especially in this episode. Like, she got a really good scene with Frost here. And also, given the fact that I really didn't like Kramer as a character, I think just shows how great she was. Because, you know, we're not meant to like this character. She is supposed to be this really annoying thorn in Team Flash's side, and I think she did a fantastic job portraying that. So a really good storyline overall, especially, you know, with Frost, with Kramer, with the metahuman cure. It just presented a lot of really interesting issues and some really cool storylines here within the world of the Flash. Now, the other storyline we had going on while all this was happening is Barry investigating Faweza. Now, Faweza was the character who kind of showed up in episode 4 of this season, the Abracadabra episode, which was a really good one, by the way. Absolutely loved seeing David Desmalchin come back as Abracadabra. He's fantastic. But Faweza is the Strength Force, and we meet up with her in this episode, and it turns out, similarly to the actor or the character who was the Still Force, the Strength Force isn't actually a threat like the Speed Force suggests that she is. We actually meet her. Her name is Alexa, and she is actually a community worker helping the people of Keystone City to... she's helping the less fortunate in that city, and she just unfortunately gets overtaken by the Strength Force and becomes Faweza against her own will. You know, this character mentions the fact that she has blackouts, she wakes up in places she doesn't know, and she doesn't remember how she got there. So she isn't actually Faweza in the sense that she isn't self-aware when it's happening. It's the Strength Force just completely taking over and basically taking over her body and her mind and her will. And that was, again, really interesting because, like we saw with the Still Force back in episode 6, you know, it turns out that the Still Force wasn't actually a threat. Like, he just wanted to be left alone. And it seems like the Strength Force actually just wants to help. She just has this thing inside of her that doesn't allow her to do that, and you know, basically takes over her entire life, and it just creates this interesting plot between Barry and the Speed Force, because the Speed Force is saying, well, they're all a threat, you know, you should look after me, I look after you, you look after me, that's the deal. You know, that's what she's saying to Barry, at least, and it's just an interesting dynamic, because we get to see her getting really agitated in this. Like, Michelle Harrison does a really good job here, you know, especially that scene where she basically just full-on interrogates and screams at Alexa was really good, and I liked Grant Gustin's reaction to it all. It was all really well done. But it was just an interesting dynamic, and I really like the character of Alexa. Like, obviously she does unfortunately die at the end of this episode, but I thought she was really good with what she delivered here, and I really enjoyed her performance altogether. So this was, again, a really cool story to go alongside this Killer Frost arc that we had currently going on. Now, the ending of the episode was also pretty bittersweet, because I've never seen an ending quite like this. Because it is such a bittersweet episode and a bittersweet ending, because it essentially ends with Killer Frost basically saying, look, I don't want to take the cure, I don't want to give up my powers, because it basically is who I am, but in response to that, like, in terms of, if you want to remove the threat of Central City that I apparently pose, then I will do a life sentence in prison. And that's where this episode ends. It ends with Frost being arrested and taken to, well, we assume is Iron Heights, or maybe she'll be taken to Argus, I guess we'll wait and see. But she is basically saying, yeah, I'm going for a life sentence. So, will we ever see Frost again? I don't know. I mean, I guess as long as Danielle Panabaker's on the show, there is the potential that we can see her. But, you know, she's going for the life sentence, which, I mean, I don't know how the life sentence is going to work in this, because obviously life sentence doesn't actually mean life, so we'll have to see what that actually sort of results to in this, and also how often we're going to see Frost going forward. But if this is the end of her character, like if this is the end of the story for her, like, I think that's a pretty cool way for her to go out, and it really does show that she has changed from her, you know, original evil roots that she began as, and she has now, you know, taken the fall to avoid that precedent being set, and just taking the life sentence so she doesn't remove who she is. And I thought it was a really cool way to end that story arc, and it was emotional for her, it was emotional for Caitlin. Again, Danielle Panabaker did a fantastic job here, so I really enjoyed all of that, and I thought it was just a really nice way to tie up this arc and tie up that character if this is the last time that we see her. And the episode ends with a big reveal, which I think a lot of us saw coming, which is that the Speed Force essentially turns on Barry and the team by killing Alexa and turning on Barry. And I thought this was, again, pretty obvious, to be honest. I kind of saw this one coming. But we do see Michelle Harrison's Speed Force just completely turn on Barry. I'm going to be interested to see what goes on here, because I still don't really know what her motivation is. Obviously, she has been saying to Barry for as long as she's been around that, you know, she's being hunted and hurt by these other forces, you know, the Strength Force and the Speed Force, the Still Force, you know, they've been coming after her. But the evidence suggests, from what we've seen of the other forces, that that just isn't true. I mean, yeah, there was Psyche in episode 5, who was definitely a villain and was trying to harm people. But like I say, the Still Force and the Strength Force, that just wasn't the case. So what is her end goal here? Because, you know, without Barry, she can't really survive, and Barry can't have his powers without her, or without it. So I don't really know what the end goal is here for the Speed Force. I feel like this is a bit of a weird villain turn, like, even though I thought it was kind of predictable given the way this character has been acting. I'm just interested to see what they're going to do with her, because obviously, like I say, it's a bit of a strange villain turn, and I just want to know what her ultimate goal is and why she's turned against the team. Like, what is she actually trying to do? So again, interesting ending, excited to see where it goes, and again, it's cool to have, I mean, either way, it's really cool to have Michelle Harrison on the show playing the Speed Force. Like, obviously that's just a cool casting. So I'll see where it goes. So overall, a really good episode of The Flash for me. I thought this was really strong. You know, like I say, we don't really get many episodes like this on The Flash. There was pretty much no action in this episode and no Flash. Obviously we got a lot of Barry, but in terms of him in the suit as the Flash, we basically got one scene and that was it. So a really interesting episode. It was mainly a courtroom drama. I really enjoyed all of that stuff, and I felt that the Barry and Fuerza and Speed Force storyline was also really strong and really compelling. And again, the ending, while I'm interested, you know, to see what they do with this villainous turn of the Speed Force, Killer Frost being arrested and taken for a life sentence was definitely a nice way to wrap up that character, even if it is incredibly sad. But I think this could be a really cool way to propel the storyline forward into graphic novel number 4, which will be in the back half of this season. But what did you guys think about this episode? Make sure to let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Did you enjoy this episode? Did you not? Whatever you think, let me know in the comments down below. And if you want to see more DC content like this and Flash videos and reviews just like this, then be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss any uploads from me. And I hope to see you guys again next time.